In walks Lume. So
in walks Lume. So I know you did the study that said like this is what's happening. Like you confirmed like that the same gas released when semen and bodily fluids form is the same odor connect with BV. But then how did the idea to prevent the odor, like where did that come from?
So I was trying to get pregnant and on call. And when you're a resident, like you value sleep and food over a shower, like first of all, showering in a hospital shower, it's like you do everything but like you just carry wipes and you're doing all the things you can to like stay hygienic, you know. But knowing that I was trying to get pregnant, I thought the frequency of intercourse that was happening and then the overnights and into the next day. So one day as a resident is like equivalent to 3 days as for a normal human when I was in my training. Because you go to work that morning really early, you're there all night and then the night before, and you get home. And unless you are like jumping right in the shower, you are opting for eating and sleeping. And then it's the next day, like that third day, you're showering again. And so noticed this odor for the very first time where I was like, oh my gosh, I noticed the odor that smells just like BV. And I said, do I have BV? Like, well, do I? But I knew that I didn't because the odor just came so quickly. And I thought, so I did a little like investigating and I realized that this odor was on the outside. It was on the outside of the skin, like around like between the butt cheeks and the like around the vulva, but really between the butt cheeks is where I noticed it. And I'm like, this is what's happening. Doctors are and patients are noticing this odor. Yeah. And they're treating women, they're treating the odor, they're treating the history. They're saying, I have that odor, it's back, I think I have an infection. And they're leaving the doctor's office with an antibiotic that they don't need. Mm-hmm. I literally went home that night, and I would say within 24 hours, I had a version of Lume made in my kitchen. And I was like, okay, shower, put it on, let's have sex 3 days in a row and see if this odor comes. See if this odor
Your husband's
goes away.
Like, oh, shucks.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was...
because it was all about the pH, right? Is that where you started? But like the pH, so you're like, it's got to be in the pH somewhere.
So just knowing the chemistry of BV, it's the same type of bacteria, these anaerobic bacteria, meaning they don't need oxygen to survive, become more abundant in the vagina so that when the pH then rises and just normal vaginal discharge and semen and blood, that odor forms inside the vagina, right? And then it finds its way to the outside because whatever's up comes down, right, due to gravity. And so those odors are noticed with BV as well. But what I noticed is that shift in pH, so when the pH goes up in women who have BV inside the vagina, that odor forms. Well, semen has a very high pH. So you're taking those bacteria that are commonly found in our GI tract that can populate the vagina during a BV outbreak or a BV shift. Mm-hmm. It's really a shift in bacterial flora that then the odor is produced. I thought, well, semen is what's artificially, creating this like high pH environment, and it's mimicking what happens with BV. And those bacteria that are commonly found in our GI tract find their way to the outside of our anatomy, perirectal, vulvar. We're never completely sanitized. Like bacteria start replicating the second you step out of the shower. And so those bacteria are very similar to what happens with BV. So when those bacteria digest semen, it's mimicking BV on the outside of our body, but it's not BV, and men get it too. So what I thought is if I could learn as much as possible about that odor reaction, then how I could probably keep it from happening. Yeah. So I noticed it in BV, and then there's another human condition called fishy odor syndrome, trimethylamminuria. Trimethylamminuria. It's a metabolic acidemia.
But it's full body, isn't it?
It's full body. So what happens is, so I know that I really am nerding out on this right now, but what happens is we eat proteins as humans, and when they find their way to our lower GI tract, like that's really why poop stinks. It doesn't stink because of anything in our stomach or our small colon. It's those anaerobic bacteria that are digesting proteins and like the nutrients in our GI tract that then form these odors, and that's why your poop stinks, right? But when there's certain amino acids that find their way down and your body lacks the enzymes to break them down, like choline, for instance, bacteria digest it and you get trimethylamine, which is the fishy odor gas that happens with BV. And it happens, so these individuals have like a fishy odor syndrome due to a lack of an enzyme that allows them to digest certain amino acids, and as a result, they smell like fish. And so I looked at that metabolic pathway and those enzymes that are necessary, and what's the perfect environment to make that reaction happen faster, and what would be a hostile environment to really slow it down. And it was, if you drop the pH to a certain point, you can completely halt that reaction. But the problem with like acidified douching, so like all that's happening is you're putting vinegar up in the vagina. It's leaking out onto the outside of our body and it's doing its job. But because it's just liquid, as soon as it dries, its job is done. So we needed a product that was long lasting on the skin, that could allow for those bacterial reactions to be blocked or stop the odor before it starts for a longer period of time. And like the silver bullet of Lume was really born from that.